Welcome to the debate. Today, we're taking the device that lives in your pocket, the one you probably check, 200 times a day, and we're stripping away the marketing. We aren't looking at megapixels or screen refresh rates. We're looking at this device as a battleground for digital sovereignty.
Exactly. We're asking the hard question. Who actually owns that phone? Is it you, or is it just a terminal for a corporation?
We are examining the landscape of mobile privacy, specifically within the Android ecosystem. And we're going to contrast the Android platform security model, that's the standard architecture used by billions, against the hardened zero-trust approach of custom operating systems like GrapheneOS and the community favorite LineageOS.
It is, and this is, without hyperbole, the most critical discussion we can have regarding personal computing. The central question is this: is the standard security model, which, relies on trusting a central authority and a polite agreement between app and OS, is that sufficient? Or do we need to burn that trust to the ground and adopt the aggressive architectural hardening found in GrapheneOS?
I'm representing the position that the standard Android security architecture, specifically when stripped of manufacturer bloat through projects like LineageOS, provides a robust, balanced framework. It's defense in depth that actually survives contact with the real world. It protects you without making your life miserable.
And I am here to argue that standard Android, and yes, I'm including iOS in this critique, is built on an illusion of safety. I represent the view that GrapheneOS is the superior choice because it fundamentally rewrites how the operating system handles trust. It treats everything, even its own system components, as a potential threat.
Okay, so let's lay the foundation here. There's this pervasive myth in the privacy community that the Android open source project, AOSP, is this wild west of insecurity. That if you run standard Android, you're just leaking data like a sieve. But if you actually look at the Android Platform Security Model paper from 2023, that just isn't true. It articulates a highly sophisticated governance structure.
Sophisticated on paper, sure. But how effective is it in reality?
Well, let me set the stage. The model is based on what's called multi-party authorization. The core philosophy is that no sensitive action happens on the device unless 3 parties agree: the user, the platform, the OS itself, and the developer. It's a checks and balances system. The developer has to request it, the platform has to broker it, and you, the user, have to consent.
See, I take issue with that immediately. You're using the word authorization. I view that as a polite fiction. In that model, the platform usually means Google or the OEM. If the platform is compromised, or if the platform's business model depends on not asking for your permission, that 3-party agreement just collapses. It's 2 wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner.
I think that's a bit cynical. Let's look at the mechanics. The platform utilizes UID, user ID, sandboxing. Now, in Linux, which Android is built on, different users are usually actual people. But in Android, every single app is treated as a distinct user. Your calculator app has a unique ID. Your Maps app has a unique ID. They are isolated at the kernel level. They literally cannot see each other's memory.
In theory, but isolation is only as good as the walls between the cells.
It works in practice. And then you have SE Linux Security Enhanced Linux. Think of this as the bouncer at the club. Even if an app manages to trick the system, SE Linux enforces mandatory access control. If the policy doesn't explicitly say, this app can touch this microphone driver, the action is blocked by default. It's a deny all default. This is why I champion LineageOS as the practical evolution of this. LineageOS takes that solid ASOP base, keeps the security model, but strips out all the Samsung or Xiaomi bloatware that introduces holes. And it supports everything from a brand new OnePlus 13 to a Sony Xperia 1V. It democratizes privacy.
Democratizes. It's a nice word. But I just don't buy the democratization argument if the underlying structure has cracks in the foundation. You talk about isolation, but let's get technical for a second. Standard Android relies on the zygote spawning model.
Right. Explain that for the listeners who aren't kernel engineers.
Sure. So imagine you're building a row of houses. In the standard Android model, to save time, you build one master house, the zygote. It has all the libraries loaded, the memory layout is all set. Every time you open an app, the system effectively clones that master house to create the new app process. It's fast, it saves memory, but it means every single app shares a common initial memory layout and certain secrets.
It optimizes for performance. We all hate slow app launches.
It optimizes for performance at the expense of security. If an attacker knows where the bathroom is in the master house, they know where it is in every house. It makes address space layout randomization, ASLR, which is supposed to hide where code lives in memory, much, much weaker. If I can map the Zygote, I can map your banking app. GrapheneOS rejects this. We implement XX spawning.
Which is what?
We build every house from scratch. Every single time an app launches, it is created as a fresh process with a totally unique, randomized memory layout. Yes, it might cost you a few hundred milliseconds in cold start time. You might wait an extra beat for Instagram to open. But it destroys an entire class of memory-based attacks that rely on predicting that shared layout. And LineageOS doesn't do this. It inherits that Zygote weakness.
Okay, I will concede the Zygote point is technically valid regarding the memory layout, but we have to ground this in reality. You're talking about cold start times. On a high-end Pixel, sure, you barely notice. But on a mid-range device, which is what most of the world uses, that performance hit makes the phone feel sluggish. And if the phone feels broken, users just go back to insecure stock ROMs.
Security is a trade-off.
But you're trading too much. And you're ignoring the strides standard Android has made in permissions. I mean, we aren't in the Android 4.0 days anymore. We've moved from install time permissions, where you just agree to everything to get the app, to runtime permissions, and now to context-dependent permissions. I can say, you only get my location while I am using this app.
Asking nicely again.
It's not just asking nicely. Look at the Private Compute Core, or PCC. This is a brilliant architectural addition in modern Android. It creates an isolated environment specifically for processing sensitive data, like now playing music recognition or live caption. That data is processed in a sandbox that has no route to the network. It's a sandbox within a sandbox. For 99% of threat models, standard controls plus the privacy dashboard are more than sufficient.
That's a compelling argument for a casual user. I'll grant you that. The Private Compute Core is a step forward, but have you considered how easily those permissions can be coerced or bypassed? You mentioned the Now Playing feature. That requires trusting the OS to keep that sandbox secure. In GrapheneOS, we don't need a special Private Compute Core to trust. We have sandboxing that assumes hostility from the start. Let's talk about storage scopes. This is where the philosophy just diverges sharply.
Storage scopes, that's effectively a permission manager, right?
No, it is fundamentally different. In standard Android, when an app says, I need access to your photos to upload a profile picture, you have a binary choice. If you deny access, the app often crashes or refuses to run. If you grant it, that app can technically scan every photo on your device in the background. It's all or nothing.
13 fixed a lot of that by limiting access to selected items.
Only if the app chooses to use it, and many don't. Storage scopes in GrapheneOS lets you feed the application a lie. The app says, give me storage access. You say yes through storage scopes. The app thinks it has full access, but GrapheneOS actually places it in a dummy environment. It sees an empty folder. It believes it has access, so it doesn't crash.
So it's an emulation of a file system.
Exactly. Then, when you want to upload a photo, you pick one file. GrapheneOS injects that single file into the dummy folder. The app sees it, uploads it, and is none the wiser. It ensures compatibility while enforcing a lie for the sake of privacy. And we do the same with contact scopes. You can give an app a totally empty address book. The app runs, it just thinks you're unpopular. But it can't scrape your social graph.
That is a clever feature, I admit. But I would frame it differently. You are prioritizing obfuscation, lying to the software, over the standard contract between the developer and the user. Standard Android utilizes the Storage Access Framework, or SAF. When I use the System File Picker to open a document, the app only gets a temporary grant to read that specific file. That is built right into the OS. It's cleaner.
Cleaner but optional for the developer. Apps can, and they do, refuse to use SAF and demand the broad permission. They hold the functionality hostage. GrapheneOS allows you to bypass that hostage situation. Furthermore, Standard Android does not let you fully revoke the network permission for system apps or apps that demand it.
You can restrict background data usage in the settings.
Restricted background data is not the same as network.none. GrapheneOS allows you to cut the network cord for any app. You can install a flashlight app or an offline camera app or a PDF reader and logically prevent it from ever sending us a single packet of data. Even if it wants to spy on you, it has no mouth to scream with. That is control.
I'm not convinced by the network.none argument because it ignores the functionality that relies on that connectivity. And this leads us directly to the elephant in the room, the Google problem. The reality is that the vast majority of users, even privacy-conscious ones, need Google Play services.
Need is a strong word.
It's the correct word for modern life. They need it for banking notifications. If you don't have Play services, you don't get Firebase Cloud messaging, which means your bank app doesn't tell you money just moved. You need it for Uber or Lyft maps. You need it for Android Auto to navigate to work.
Which is exactly the trap. They've made convenience the cage.
It's utility, not a trap. LineageOS handles this pragmatically. It offers a pure AOSP experience, but it allows users to flash gaps packages if they want them. It respects the user's choice to balance convenience with de-Googling. If you completely de-Google, you break eSIM management from any carriers. You break push notifications. You essentially turn a $1,000 smartphone into a dumb phone.
I come at it from a different way. You are presenting a false dichotomy, either full Google surveillance or a broken phone. GrapheneOS solves this with sandboxed Google Play. This is perhaps our most significant innovation, and it completely invalidates that broken phone argument.
But you're still installing Google Play code on the device. You can't say you're de-Googled if you install the Play Store.
But context is everything. In standard Android, and listen closely here, and even in LineageOS, if you flash gaps, Google Play Services runs with absolute high-level system privileges. It runs as root or near root. It has deep hooks into the OS. It can bypass permissions. It is God on your machine.
And in Graphene?
In GrapheneOS, we developed a compatibility layer that forces Google Play to run as a standard unprivileged application within the sandbox. It has no special powers. It cannot see your data unless you grant it specific permissions.
So it's Google in a straitjacket?
Precisely. We even reroute location requests. If an Uber app asks Google Play for your location, normally Google Play would use that to track you. In GrapheneOS, we intercept that request, fulfill it through the OS's own geolocation backend, and hand the coordinates back to the app. Google Play never touches the raw GPS data.
I will concede that the sandbox play approach is a technical marvel. It really does bridge the gap. But let's talk about where this software lives. You are tethering this entire security model to one specific hardware line, the Google Pixel.
A necessary constraint.
A restrictive one. It is ironic, is it not? To achieve this freedom, you must purchase hardware from the very company you claim to mistrust. You are literally giving Google money to hide from Google. LineageOS supports a vast ecosystem. You can take a perfectly good Poco F5 Pro or a Motorola Edge Plus or a Sony Xperia and keep it secure and updated long after the manufacturer abandons it.
But can you? Really?
Yes. XDA developers cites this as one of the top reasons to love LineageOS. It prevents e-waste. By limiting GrapheneOS to pixels, you are engaging in a form of hardware elitism that ignores the economic reality of many users who can't just go buy a Pixel 8.
E-waste, and I do respect the environmental angle. But from a security perspective, I cannot compromise. Software security is useless without hardware integrity. The reason GrapheneOS supports pixels, and only pixels, is not because we love Google. It's because they are currently the only vendor that allows us to relock the bootloader with a custom cryptographic key.
LineageOS supports verified boot on many devices now.
Not in the same way. Be honest about the installation process. To run LineageOS on a Xiaomi or a OnePlus, you unlock the bootloader, and usually you have to leave it unlocked. This disables verified boot.
Explain why that matters to the listener.
Verified boot is a chain of trust. When you turn on your phone, the chip checks the bootloader checks the kernel checks the OS. If you have an unlocked bootloader, that chain is broken from the first link. This leaves you wide open to what are called evil maid attacks.
The evil maid scenario?
Yes. You leave your phone in a hotel room. An adversary, a jealous spouse, a corporate spy, a government agent plugs a cable in. In 5 minutes, because your bootloader is unlocked, they flash a modified boot partition. They install a keylogger. They put the phone back. You come back, unlock your phone, and you've lost everything. And you would never know.
See, this is where we drift into Mission Impossible territory. While I acknowledge the evil maid threat exists, for the average user, the threat model is remote execution. It's a phishing link. It's a bad app. It's not a physical interdiction by a spy in a hotel room. LineageOS, keeping a device on the latest Android security patch level, protecting against the vulnerabilities being exploited today over the web, is a far more tangible benefit than protection against a physical tampering attack that affects, 0.01% of the population?
But we build for the 0.01% so that the 99% are safe. That is the philosophy of security engineering. And it's not just physical attacks. Consider the baseband.
The modem.
Right. The modem is a separate computer inside your phone that talks to the cell towers. It runs proprietary code. GrapheneOS includes an LTE-only mode to defend against 2G and 3G stingray attacks. These are fake cell towers used by police and criminals to force your phone down to an older, unencrypted protocol to intercept your calls and texts.
Standard Android allows you to prefer network types. I can go into settings and select LTE 5G. It allows you to prefer them. It rarely allows you to fully disable the older protocols at the modem level. Your phone will still handshake with 2G if the signal drops. We cut that off.
And we implement auto reboot. If your phone hasn't been unlocked in a set period, say 18 hours, it reboots itself.
Why is that better than just the screen being off?
Because of encryption states. When your phone is on but locked, the encryption keys are sitting in memory. Sophisticated forensic tools, like those from Celebrite, can sometimes extract them. When the phone reboots, the keys are wiped from memory. They are at rest, protected by the Titan M chip, making forensic extraction nearly impossible. This is defense in depth in practice.
I want to pivot slightly because there is an elephant in the room, or rather an apple. When people talk about mobile privacy, they usually say, just get an iPhone.
I was waiting for this.
It's the standard advice. The argument is that iOS is a walled garden. Apple's business model isn't ad-based. They sell hardware, therefore they don't sell your data. Reddit discussions frequently cite this as the reason to switch to iOS. It's cleaner, it's smoother, and it's perceived as safer from malware because you can't sideload easily.
Perceived is the operative word there. It's trust versus verify.
But the perception creates reality for the market. They see the Ask App Not to Track button and they assume the problem is solved.
And that is dangerous. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy the Apple cares about privacy marketing. You cannot audit iOS. It is proprietary code. You have no idea what it is sending to Cupertino. In fact, we have data on this. The Trinity College Dublin study, which made waves in the security community, showed that iPhones send essentially the same amount of telemetry data to Apple as a stock Pixel sends to Google.
That is a fair point regarding telemetry. They both phone home a lot.
It's worse than that. The identifiers are linked to your identity. GrapheneOS takes a scorched earth approach to telemetry. We have no default network connections to cloud servers. We don't ping a server to check for time or connectivity unless you configure it. And let's talk about Wi-Fi tracing. Standard iOS and Android randomize your MAC address per network. That's good.
It prevents retailers from tracking your movement across a mall?
Right, but GrapheneOS randomizes the MAC address for every single connection by default. It changes constantly. It makes you a ghost on the network layer.
I see why you value that, but let me give you a different perspective on the walled garden. By restricting what code can run, Apple, and to a lesser extent the standard Android Google Play Protect system, creates herd immunity. They eliminate the vast majority of low-effort malware. GrapheneOS, by virtue of allowing apps to be installed from anywhere like F-Droid or direct APK downloads, technically reintroduces the user as the point of failure. If a user installs a malicious app on GrapheneOS, even with the hardening, they can still be phished. They can still type their password into a fake field.
That is why the hardening is internal. You're assuming the wall keeps the enemy out, I assume the enemy is already inside. Even if a user installs malware on GrapheneOS, the malware is trapped. It cannot spawn a child process to escalate privileges because of the XX spawning we discussed. It can't access the clipboard unless the user hits paste because we locked that down. It can't scrape the screen. We assume the user will install malware, and we design the OS to neuter it.
I think that brings us to a philosophical convergence. Surprisingly, we both agree that the factory settings, the Samsung One UI, the carrier bloatware, the unremovable Facebook services found on so many mid-range devices, those are the real enemy here.
Absolutely. That is the baseline we need to rise above.
For the vast majority of listeners, the standard Android security model, specifically when realized through a clean install like LineageOS or even a stock Pixel, represents a massive improvement over the status quo. It utilizes multi-party authorization to create a balanced ecosystem, it keeps older hardware out of the landfill, and it allows for banking and modern conveniences to function without requiring a degree in computer engineering. It's the Honda Civic of privacy, reliable, accessible, and safe enough for the highway.
It is an improvement, yes, but it is not a solution. It's a Honda Civic with the doors unlocked. GrapheneOS is the only mobile OS that treats the user as the sole administrator of the device. We reject the idea that privacy features like standard permissions are enough. The architecture itself, from the hardened memory allocator to the kernel-level protections, must be hostile to data exfiltration.
But that hostility can come at the cost of usability, which drives users back to less secure platforms. If the barrier to entry is too high, people just give up.
If you want true ownership of your digital life, you must move beyond simply de-Googling. You have to embrace hardening. You have to accept that convenience is often the currency with which you pay for your privacy. You trade the ease of logging with Google for the security of owning your keys.
And I would argue that security that is too inconvenient is security that will inevitably be bypassed by the user. But what is undeniable is that the existence of projects like GrapheneOS puts pressure on the entire industry. We see features that started in the custom ROM community eventually migrating into AOSP.
That is true. The standard model is getting better because we are showing them where the holes are. We are the tip of the spear.
Whether you choose the balanced defense of the standard model or the fortified bunker of GrapheneOS, the important step is taking control of the device in your hand. Don't just accept the default.
Indeed. Don't just trust, verify.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening to The Debate.